These bones are rubber. You can kind of lay in them. You know what I mean? So just start kind of with your feet up like this. We'll put some stuff on you, like you kind of landed up in a pile of it.
As a director, producer, and writer, James Cameron is one of today's best-known American filmmakers. His 5 major films have grossed more than $1 billion around the world, and he's achieved this status in just 12 years. Cameron grew up in Canada, moving to the small Southern California town of Brea with his family after high school. The town provided little in the way of creative stimulation, so the ambitious teenager began to create inviting fantasy worlds with the aid of a Super 8 film camera.
So I was looking at 10 million things and seeing the one thing that was interesting and focusing the lens on that and taking that or capturing that.
After studying cinematography at a local college, Cameron and his friend, fellow film buff Bill Wisher, collaborated on a science fiction short called Xenogenesis.
I mean, in my mind, there's Steven Spielberg and Jim Cameron and Steven Spielberg. It's like those two guys. And we would go and see Steven Spielberg's movies. I didn't realize he was going to become that other guy, but I knew he was very, very talented and driven.
Biding his time as a machinist and a truck driver, Cameron's break came in the late 70s when he found work with low-budget film legend Roger Corman. Visual effects supervisor Chuck Comiskey first hired Cameron to build miniatures for Battle Beyond the Stars. He was sure he saw potential after viewing Xenogenesis.
I mean, 2 things became apparent, early on, that he was immensely talented, and that whoever I happened to put on the crew working with him better be able to keep up with him, or they were going to be in for not necessarily a hard time. Jim isn't hard, but he just doesn't have patience for what he considers ineptness.
He pushes people to do as much as he can, and most people can't. And I think that that's why, you hear about the T-shirts, "You can't scare me, I've worked for Jim Cameron," and so forth and so on. But everybody signs up to do it again.
Cameron quickly moved up the low-budget ladder, eventually landing the directing job on Piranha 2, The Spawning. A feud with the producers forced him to leave before the film was edited, but Cameron came away with his first director credit.
The lessons from low-budget filmmaking are the life lessons of a filmmaker, and basically they are that you have to rely on your own resources. You have to make it happen. If I ever write a book about filmmaking, it's going to be called, Making It Happen, because that's what you do. You have to make it happen. You have to find the way. And on a low-budget film, there's no sort of going back. There's no second chance. You either get it or you don't.
While working on Piranha 2, Cameron had a feverish dream that would prove to be the inspiration for his breakthrough film, The Terminator.
He said that he had this dream, actually, now I remember, this dream of the Terminator walking out of the fire. He said he used to have these wonderful nightmares, and he said he always preferred a nightmare to a pleasant dream because a nightmare was really interesting and there was stuff in it he could use, and pleasant dreams you just forget about.
I think dream imagery was certainly very, very important to me in my late teens and early 20s. I was just constantly having a lot of stuff coming up out of the subconscious and wanting to I would wake up and start drawing immediately because I'd have to get those images down somehow, or I'd start to write them down.
He wanted to write something that was so commercial, that was so good, that people wanted to make it so badly that he could force them to let him direct it.
Get out.
The completed script for The Terminator generated a lot of interest in Hollywood. Cameron wanted to direct the film himself, but most major studios balked at financing an effects-filled thriller with a no-name at the helm.
He's always preferred directing to writing, and he claims, he swears up and down that he hates to write. I don't really believe that, because if he hated writing so much, he wouldn't be as good at it as he is. But clearly he prefers directing.
Cameron sold his script to a production consortium that agreed to let him direct The Terminator. The film, made for $6.4 million, revolves around a cyborg, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who returns from the future to terminate a seemingly innocent young woman.
I actually backed into that storyline from my experience, my early experience as a low-budget filmmaker, which was I knew how to do visual effects, and I knew how to do them cheaply. It didn't make sense for me to do a big budget visual effects film that took place on another planet or in space or something like that, because I wouldn't be trusted as a director with that kind of budget. And that was sort of the way I approached the story. It was a little bit mercenary, but it actually, you know, guided the writing toward a pretty simple, straightforward story that I think was a lot of the strength of that story.
Cameron's dream that inspired The Terminator was so vivid that he not only incorporated it into his script material, but did drawings from the experience as well. Well-known makeup effects artist Stan Winston was approached by the neophyte filmmaker to create the cyborg's foundation, or endoskeleton.
My first introduction to Jim Cameron was his painting of the endoskeleton. What you see behind me is a direct representation of this initial design of Jim Cameron's.
Come with me if you want to live.
The Terminator was a hit with audiences. They liked the film's unique blend of action, humor, and romance. Critics as well liked the film for its sharp storytelling. James Cameron's first major movie was the sleeper hit of 1984, earning more than $70 million around the world.
When Masters of Fantasy continues, James Cameron creates his next stunning sci-fi spectacles. iChannel's Masters of Fantasy continues with James Cameron.
Not the success of Terminator, James Cameron surprised Hollywood veterans by deciding to make the outer space saga Aliens his second major project. Working from a script he had written a few years earlier, Aliens would come 7 years after Ridley Scott's innovative hit film, Alien.
After Terminator came out and was quite a success, everybody who knew me said, don't do Alien 2, it's career suicide, it's a no-win situation. If it's good, Ridley will get the credit, and if it's bad, you'll never work again, that sort of thing. And I went, but guys, I love it. I want to do this movie. Why can't I do the movie? You know, so it was this kind of childlike approach to it. But I knew, but you know, also on the other hand, I was trying to be as smart as possible about it, and intellectually, I knew that I had to create my own stylistic territory while being true to the first film.
Get them out of there! Shut up! Do it now!
Shut up!
And I think the big positive surprise was that you could do a film that was consistent with the first Alien film, Ridley's picture, that was also a real roller coaster ride in terms of action and kineticism, and a kind of more of an adventure movie than a gothic suspense horror film.
Once again, Cameron relied on the mechanical and modeling techniques he was familiar with. Elaborating on H.R. Giger's alien design from the first film, Cameron rendered his own drawings of an alien queen. Then, he asked Stan Winston to help put his ideas on the screen.
The most interesting thing about it for me was when Jim, in broad strokes, said, I've got this crazy idea. He says, I think what we should do is I want to put a couple of guys in the bodysuit and use their arms, and we'll build off of that, and there'll be these two guys in the body, and it'll have 4 arms, and the creature will fly it on a crane, and the rest of it will puppet like the legs, and it'll be about 14 or 15 feet tall, and that's sort of my idea. And I'm sitting here listening to him, and I'm going, well, man, isn't he crazy? Now that's just impossible. And in fact, this sort of broad stroke, insane idea that Jim bounced off me the first day we were talking about it is exactly as the Queen Alien turned out in the movie.
Go! Move!
Gaining confidence in both his creative and technical abilities, Cameron's Aliens hurled visual and verbal assaults at movie audiences who loved the sci-fi and horror-laced action. Aliens was so successful, it helped break the myth that sequels couldn't out-earn their original films at the box office. Writer-director James Cameron was now a force to be reckoned with.
Oh my God. What?
Grab on to something!
There's been no film that was ever done that has been as difficult as The Abyss. Not Waterworld. It wasn't as difficult as The Abyss. They got to work above the surface. The Abyss is the most difficult film ever made.
James Cameron's next film, the undersea science fiction epic The Abyss, expanded on a short story he had written in high school. That, in turn, had been inspired by the old Jacques Cousteau TV series. For 2 grueling months, underwater scenes were shot at a non-operating nuclear power plant in South Carolina. The often repeated stories about the incredible obstacles faced by cast and crew in shooting The Abyss are, for the most part, true. But through it all, visual effects supervisor John Bruno says the director never failed to come up with the perfect shot.
Jim just continued to push for exactly what he wanted. I mean, here's the thing about Jim. We come up with these illustrations. We spend a lot of months honing them down into this is the shot, this is this illustration, this is the image I want to see, and he pushes you to deliver that image.
In his first 2 films, Cameron had avoided using some of the newer visual effects techniques. He feared they wouldn't work with his kinetic film style. But for The Abyss, John Bruno introduced him to Hollywood's top effects experts, and they allayed his fears, to some extent.
If I had one thing to do over again, I would have put even more confidence in the computer graphics, which is easy to say in hindsight, but at the time it was completely unproven, so we limited it to 1 scene.
One of Cameron's storylines involved a pseudopod, or water-controlling alien, which makes contact with the human divers. He went to Industrial Light and Magic to create the sequence.
Seawater.
History had always been that if you deliver the work to a CGI group, they're going to drop the ball. But Dennis Muren, who is the visual effects supervisor, could not come up with a way to be able to do the sequence without doing CGI. And Jim was technical enough to be able to see some wireframe moves of the sequence where he said, I get it, I buy it, go further.
I mean, it was one of those ideas that's so powerful and so good that you know, it's hard to blow it. You know, I mean, it could have looked terrible, but it was such a good idea.
Budgeted at $40 million, The Abyss took in $100 million at global box offices, and it won the 1989 Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. Cameron had created a film full of movie firsts, but audiences didn't embrace it as eagerly as his 2 earlier films.
If I had done a little bit more, maybe toward the end of the film, and tied it up stylistically where we saw the water tentacle kind of effects again, the living water, toward the end of the film, then I think it would have been almost a perfect film in that sense of connecting through visually. But we were trying something there. I mean, we were going for a very experimental thing. You know, we were flying an X-15 at that point, and so it was really pretty impossible to put your faith in an unproven technique. Although we did, only a couple years later in Terminator 2, put a lot of faith in a still pretty unproven technique.
Cameron's experience with computer-generated imagery on The Abyss encouraged him to push the boundaries of these techniques on T2.
I had this idea for this liquid metal guy, but we had to run out all the permutations of what it would look like and how we could do it. And I was on the phone with Dennis Muren at ILM and Stan Winston all the time that we were doing this writing, saying, what if I wrote a scene like this, how would we do it? That sort of thing. So, it was really developed with a knowledge of what might be possible. Not what was possible at that moment, but what might be possible within a year.
Jim pushed the envelope on Terminator 2 beyond anything we had seen historically up until that period of time. He pushed it in story. He pushed it from a physical effects standpoint. He pushed it from what we are capable of doing in live action and animatronics and puppets. And he pushed it in the computer world into an entirely new arena with the creation of the T-1000, and in doing so, pushed me into that arena.
Terminator 2 exploded onto theater screens in the summer of '91, and James Cameron set a new standard for action filmmaking. Grossing $500 million worldwide, Cameron had his first monster hit.
Hasta la vista, baby.
When Masters of Fantasy continues, James Cameron dives into the digital age and comes up on the cutting edge of filmmaking.
most days, this is where you'll find Dodge engineers, turning ideas into trucks that break rules, minivans that set standards, and cars that change everything. But while working in here makes them great engineers, it's playing out here that makes them Dodge engineers. The new Dodge.
Pardon me. Grey Poupon, available in a squeeze bottle.
Brute Clear Gel antiperspirants and deodorants with click control. 3 clicks give you just the right amount you need for all-day protection. Because the last thing you want to do is lose your cool. Brute by Fabergé, the essence of man.
It set the standard in do-it-yourself books. But now, we've made the best even better. Introducing the all-new Home Repair and Improvement series from Time Life Books. With new color illustrations, step-by-step instructions, and a new spiral binding so books lay flat. It's never been easier to save money and create the home you've always wanted. You'll learn how to build a deck your family will enjoy for years. The tricks of the trade to install a new patio. Call now to examine decks, porches, and patios free for 15 days. Keep it for the special low TV price of just $1.99. Use your credit card and get this Stanley tape measure absolutely free. Other volumes will follow. Keep only those you want. The new Home Repair and Improvement series from Time Life Books. We've made the best even better.
Call 1-800-419-6464 now to get decks, porches, and patios for just $1.99. That's 1-800-419-6464.
You're watching Masters of Fantasy on the Sci-Fi Channel. Masters of Fantasy continues with James Cameron.
After 4 spectacular films, James Cameron decided to take on some new and different challenges. In 1993, his flair for visual effects led him to partner with Stan Winston and Scott Ross, whom he had known at Industrial Light and Magic. Together, they started the special effects house, Digital Domain. In just 3 years, the company has become a major player in digital film effects.
It's all ultimately selfish, because I know that ultimately it's going to come back around and make my films better. But it's a good symbiotic relationship, because my films are the kind of things that give a company like Digital Domain its big push to do more, do better, and a kind of a spotlight to say, here's our best work. You know, so it works hand in glove. So far, it's worked pretty well.
Well enough so that his next film, 1994's True Lies, was full of Digital Domain's efforts. Again, the movie was a worldwide box office smash. James Cameron's latest envelope-pushing project will be unveiled this summer at Universal Studios Florida. T2 3D is a 12-minute live-action ride film that reunites the key cast members from Terminator 2. Past Cameron cohorts like Chuck Comiskey, Stan Winston, and John Bruno were brought in to lend their talents to the $60 million extravaganza.
Well, the greatest challenge on this particular project was that it was based on 2 movies, on the Terminator films, and so it had to be visually consistent stylistically. The Terminator films are very, very kinetic. The cutting is just boom, 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 you know, and that style of cutting doesn't work very well in 3D. The other problem was the camera weighs 450 pounds, and to get very, rapid movement and the kind of kinetic visual style that I'm used to doing was really an order of magnitude more difficult than it is with normal 35mm two-dimensional cameras. But, we solved it. We knew going in that was the big challenge, and we solved it. I've done a lot of explosions in my time. I think story-wise, I originally thought that this whole thing was going to blow apart.
The resources of Digital Domain were also tested on T2 3D. The film's computer-generated T1 Million monster required 47 digital artists alone. But Scott Ross, who oversees the day-to-day running of the company, has come to expect nothing less from a Cameron project.
If you do a Jim Cameron movie, it's like, buckle your seatbelts. It's just the way it is. And after every trip you take with Jim, when you say, God, thank God that's over, that was the most hairy, most exciting, experience I've ever had. You know, it's like after he's done that, he said, okay, great, so that was easy. Now let's go here. It's always a wild ride.
Hey, Puckadad.
This model represents the state of the Titanic in 1996, the way it is sitting sort of out in the middle of the Atlantic.
James Cameron and Digital Domain are currently gearing up for Cameron's newest project, Titanic. The $75 million historical drama will begin filming this summer. Cameron has been broadening the types of films he writes and directs to include non-sci-fi and horror-related subjects, but he continues to integrate cutting-edge technology into all his work.
Now this is running slow. Are you playing with the time on that?
He's particularly excited about a new digital process called motion capture, which can generate performances on a computer. Titanic will rely on motion capture and other high-end tools to help bring Cameron's latest project to the screen.
Most of it takes place inside or on the decks of the ship. The ship doesn't exist, so it'll all be sets. We'll use digital composite work to put our set of the ship at sea, as if it's truly on the ocean. So in fact, we're really not going on the ocean at all. You'll just believe you're on the ocean.
On every project, Cameron pushes technology further than it's ever gone before.
I always want to do something that's ahead of what other people have done. You know, to me, that's the challenge, that's the fun, that's what keeps us fresh, you know. That's why, you know, Digital Domain, I think, was brought into existence from my perspective anyway, was to be able to lead the pack and not follow.
Discover how the adventure began in a special feature-length presentation of The Odyssey. Tomorrow, beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern, Sci-Fi Saturday.
Do you make promises in the spring?
When everything is fresh and new.
Promises to make things better?
Do you wake up on Saturday morning feeling like you can do anything?
Do earthworms make you happy?
Do projects give you meaning?
Do you like making promises?
There's a place that will help you keep those promises. True Value.
Help is just around the corner.
Incredibly, Matchlight, the dependable one-match charcoal from Kingsford, is ready to cook on in just 15 minutes. So, the sooner you get Matchlight, the sooner you eat.
Kids don't always take good nutrition seriously, but moms know it's important for growing up healthy. That's why Flintstones has the vitamins kids need and the great taste they love.
You really want a cellular phone, but you're afraid of the service plans, activation, the true cost. So you go back and forth again. Don't do that. Come into Radio Shack. We'll patiently explain everything you need to know about going cellular. Then we can even sign you up. You'll see that not only are cellular phones nothing to be afraid of, they're actually quite friendly. Radio Shack. You've got questions, we've got answers.
We didn't put Dodge Intrepid's windshield in the usual place. We moved it forward and down to enhance visibility and aerodynamics. The wheels were moved toward the corners to make it more stable. And now many features that were options are standard. So even though Intrepid has air, speed control, power windows, and more, the price isn't where you'd expect to find it either. It's lower. Dodge Intrepid. This changes everything.
Masters of Fantasy continues with James Cameron.
Jim's a phenomenal filmmaker. He's a phenomenal filmmaker. He cares as much, if not more, than any man I have ever worked with.
No one I know I've ever met, I think, is more driven than Jim.
Every time I finish a film, I swear to myself and everybody else within earshot that I'm never going to make another movie. Forget it. You know, it's just not worth it. Life's too short. And I go off and, you know, sort of hide out for a couple of months, go scuba diving usually, just kind of head out for some tropical place and do a lot of diving. And then when I've had enough of the ocean after a few weeks, then I come back and I'm ready to go to work again. I get bored and, you know, ready to make another movie.
Just like Steven Spielberg's work until Schindler's List, James Cameron films seem to be too popular for the film industry to single him out for artistic honors. That will inevitably change as more people come to realize the impact Cameron's work has had on the art of filmmaking. But it isn't an issue for this talented director, writer, innovator, and master of fantasy.
I'm pretty happy. You know, I'll just keep on making films, and you know, till the joints wear out, and the brain wears out. You know, then they'll prop me up somewhere, and, you know. But hopefully, I can just keep making films. That's what I love.
A near-fatal accident leaves a young boy stranded between life, death, and a strange new world. Join in his incredible journey home, The Odyssey, a special feature-length presentation, tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, Sci-Fi Saturday.
Hello, I'm Richard Hart. This week on CNET Central, see the technology of tomorrow today. CNET Central brings you the future as it unfolds. That's CNET Central. Sci-Fi Channel next.